Hey, how's it? You might be listening to this right now thinking, that's pretty. Oh, okay. Yeah, so what I'm playing here, all these chords are just variations of what we call sus chords. Now, if you've never heard of sus chords before, I can assure you that there's nothing sus about them. I'm sorry. So what is a sus chord anyway? The word sus is short for suspended, and it comes from traditional classical theory, where we use it to describe delaying the resolution from one chord to the next by suspending notes from a chord over to the next chord. And usually this would take place between chord 5 going to chord 1. So if we're in the key of C major, for instance, and we've got a G7, chord 5, resolving to chord 1, C major, we could suspend one of the notes of this 5 chord. So for instance, this F over to the C, and now we have a C sus 4, because the F in the context of C is the 4th, 1, 2, 3, 4, before we would resolve it normally to C major. We could also suspend the D in the 5 chord. So for example, if you have a 5-7 voice like this, going to 1. So that's where it comes from, but all you really need to know in a practical sense is that a sus chord is where we swap out the third of our chord for either the 4th or the 2nd. So if we got a C major chord like this, we could play, instead of the 3rd, play the 4th. Now we have a C sus 4. Or you could also play the 2nd instead of the 3rd, and we have a C sus 2. Cool, so now we know there are 2 types of sus chords, sus 4 and sus 2. But we're going to take this another step further. Because the sus chord works really well as a 5 chord, we're going to make this C major of ours a dominant chord. So to do that, we're going to add the flat 7th. So the flattened 7 in the key of C would be B flat. Now apply the sus, C7 sus 4, or we can have C7 sus 2. You can also do both. You can have sus 4 and sus 2. The next step would be to improve the voicing of this chord. So instead of voicing everything in one octave like this, with just one hand, let's drop some notes down the octave. So I'm going to choose to drop the root and the 5th. Put them down here, put our flat 7 over here, and then our 9th or the 2nd, and then the 11th or the 4th. If you look at this carefully, you'll notice that we're actually playing 2 chords. We're playing a B flat triad, B flat major triad in our right hand, and we're playing the outline of a C major chord in our left hand. You can leave out the 5th of this and just play the root. It wouldn't make a big difference to the sound. So we basically have a C root, and we're playing a major triad a whole step below the C, and we get our sus chord. Now you can label this as a C7 sus 4 add 9. You could say C11. There's a bunch of ways you could label it, but the gist of it is that it's a C7 sus. Now we're going to take this one step further and add a major 7 to the triad that is in our right hand at the moment. So we've got a B flat triad here. We're going to add a major 7th here. So I have a major 7 chord in our right hand with the C root, B flat major 7 over C, which gives you a C13 sus. Really nice. Okay, great. So now we have this really fancy sounding voicing. how do we actually use it? Well, a sus chord is great to use on any chord 5. So here's an example of Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely. When I get to the 5 chord, I'll play the sus chord and see how nice it sounds. Okay, some bonus tips to think of when you're playing sus chords. You can mess around with the inversion of the chord you're playing in your right hand, right? So we've established we have this major 7 chord over our root, okay? Now I don't have to play this major 7 chord like this. That's root position. I can move it around. Depending on how you want to resolve it, you can swap around the inversion. Doesn't really matter. Whatever sound you prefer. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is put in the 3rd of the chord. So we went through this whole process and described a sus chord as not having a 3rd, swapping it out for either the 4th or the 2nd. But it's not set in stone that you can't have the 3rd in there. Just when you voice it with the 3rd, just try to voice the 3rd above the 4th. Normally that sounds a bit more pleasing, because then you have the interval of a major 7th rather than a minor 9. So a major 7 is not as dissonant sounding as this, right? You could, for instance, have something like this. There's our B flat major 7 over our C. If you add the 3rd up here, that doesn't sound bad. That sounds quite pretty, actually. If you change the 3rd to a minor 3rd, then you've got a gorgeous minor 13 sound. So instead of a C major with the B flat major 7 on top of that, change that 3rd to a minor. Ooh, really nice. Okay, so now having said all of that, here is Isn't She Lovely again, but this time I'm going to put in way too many sus chords. Alright, here we go. Enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you loved it, hit the subscribe button. Even if you didn't love it and still hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. Cheers, till the next one.